All right, everybody, what is going on? I do not know if you can hear me. I hope you can. It is good to see you. It's good to be back in this chair and doing the show. I have with me a guest today that I'm very excited to get to talking to. But first, I want to, what the fuck is that? We'll worry about it later. First, I just want to say, again, thanks you guys so much for continuing to listen and check in and all that stuff while I was not doing the show. It's more appreciated than you'll ever know. I want to get right back to it though. So without further ado, I'll bring Randy on and we will get to chatting about why I brought him on the show. What is going on, my man?
What is up, man?
All
Thanks,
right.
Kyle, for having me on.
Yeah, man, dude, I appreciate you being patient with me not having any headphones or anything last week. But it was good though, because it gave us a chance to talk on the phone, get to know you a little bit, and then we've been chatting a little bit now. So
Yeah,
I think it'll actually lead to a better conversation and ultimately, a better show. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, man. So typically what we do is just, kind of start with like, what was your service like, when and where you served, that kind of stuff. So we'll just start with, when you joined.
Yeah, I was one of the September 11th guys. You know what I mean? I was working a crappy sales job that I was either going to get fired or quit soon, and September 11th happened. And I was 33 at the time, and even though I had a very young family, I'd always wanted to go in the Army or the military, but nothing really went on. And even when Desert Storm happened, everybody knew that wasn't going to be a big deal, and of course it wasn't. So it wasn't until September 11th that something actually happened that made me think, now's the time. I need to go do my part, and that's kind of what happened. I'd made some mistakes earlier on in life and kind of had not lived up to what my capability was. And it was time for me to gain some of that respect back from my family and the community. And definitely was time for me to step up and do my part for my community because I was just pissed off as anybody else right after it happened. You know what I mean? It was a big deal. It was a big deal for everybody. And so that prompted me to enlist. And, going in at 33, there was, definitely the Marines weren't an option. So the Army, and I didn't really want to be in the Navy. I don't want to be on ships. And Air Force wasn't my gig. I mean, if I was going to be a fighter pilot or maybe a PJ, then okay, cool. I might go into the Air Force, but it just wasn't. Army was a good fit for me. And originally, I went to the recruiter's office. I wanted a Ranger contract, man, but I went down, no joke. It was only September 27th. It was only really a couple weeks later. And I went into the Dallas MEPS, which is a 4-story building in Dallas, and it was packed. It was standing room only. They were kicking old dudes like I am right now that are prior service, 40 and 50 years old, out the door, tell them, no, you can't come back in.
Like we don't need you. We got a whole room.
That's right. But it was literally packed. And I get to the job counselor and he gives me some act of, there's no of those slots left right now. We don't even have any airborne slots because so many people have come in, but I've got a $18,000 sign-on bonus to go regular infantry. And I'm like, oh, I like that.
Yes, sir.
I definitely like that.
And they're like, got him.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. He reeled me in and put the net out. Just brought me right in the boat, and I didn't even know it.
That's how they got me too. Fucking 19 grand.
Yep.
Send it.
Well, they don't tell you how they are going to end up paying you out that either. There's a whole lot to it you don't understand. And for those that I didn't just join the Army and all of a sudden $18,000 hit the bank. No, they paid me over the next 5 years after I got to my duty station. I had to get all through the basic training and everything else. So anyway, that's when I enlisted and I went into the regular Army, and then the guy didn't tell me he just said, look, you don't want to go unassigned with a family. So there's a place in Savannah, Georgia. And then he hooks the line even better. Like, there's a place in Savannah, Georgia, which it turns out to be Fort Stewart, 3rd Infantry Division, the Mechanized Infantry, the farthest thing from the Ranger Battalion that you could ever get. But he says, there are some Rangers in there in Savannah, so you will be able to link up with those guys, and they will hook you up. Which, as well as I do, if I just showed up at Hunter Army Airfield with that broken TV patch on my shoulder, they would have shot me on sight. they would have hooked me up all right, that's for sure. But so as it turned out to be, things just work out as they're supposed to, I suppose. I did go over the initial invasion with Third ID. We spent 3 months in Kuwait, then we rolled across the berm on March 19th. And wow, the first 3 days were very painful. They were trying to move us across the desert and all these tracks and everything getting stuck and broke. So we eventually hit the paved road, the hardball, and boom, raced all the way to Baghdad. I was a private, so I didn't have a lot of responsibility. I did, we saw a lot of different things. But like any other combat, and this is a low intensity conflict, there were plenty of times of boredom and just driving forever, and just keep driving until the next fuel stop. But my battalion, or it was a task force at this point, because we had engineers attached to us, we had a Fox. You ever seen one of those? It's a chemical vehicle. Supposedly it can detect the nuclear radiation from 5 miles away. So we had one of those, and that's why we were a task force. And then we also had one of our companies that were Bradleys went over to the armored division and 2 tanks. That's what a company of tanks is. 2 tanks came over, and we got those 2 tanks. So that's what made us a task force. And in the 3 weeks of combat, when it was over, we had led the whole way. We had leapfrogged with 3-7 Cav. Now the Marines were west of us and coming in a little bit different direction. But on the Army side, that's who it was, us and 3-7 Cav all the way to Baghdad. And we had 9 killed and 17 injured, or 17 wounded. And that was the highest of any unit at that time. And it wasn't because we didn't know what we were doing. It's because we were out front and we were taking it to the enemy. And we had quite a few engagements. The first V-bid that went off, which made the news back here in the States, that was some of our guys from Alpha Company, I think it was. But they were on a blocking position up there because we knew they were using it to move men, munitions, and money and intelligence and all kinds of things. So, but they ended up letting this guy call a cab. And when the cab showed up, it blew up and killed those 4 guys. So we lost our first, really the first thing that happened, the first guy we had killed was one of the tankers. And I was on guard at the TOC. And I didn't really have any kind of a built up position. I'm just kind of laying behind a rock in the middle of the desert where they said the position was. And I had a pair of binos because there was a village, probably a click from us. And then there was an onion farm to our left. It was about 300 meters. And those 2 tanks had pulled up to each other and were talking. And one of them hopped up on the ground. And about 2 minutes later, I hear what I know to be an AK. It was only 1 shot. It was very loud. And I look over, and there's a swath of blood on the whole side of that tank. And kid was PFC Sanders was his name. He was 22 years old, and he killed him. They killed him right there. And that was the first guy we had killed. Then we had a Bradley fall in the well. Then another guy died of a head injury before medevac could get there. And then the day after that, we had those 4 guys killed in the V-bid. So at that point, we were pretty salty.
Oh, yeah.
But we lost some more guys headed to the airport. And then you may have heard of this guy. He's named Sergeant First Class Paul Smith. He was the guy that got the first Medal of Honor out of GWAT, whether it be Afghanistan or Iraq. He was killed in the airport. He was the platoon sergeant of the platoon of combat engineers that were assigned to my task force. So he was literally, they had given him some EPWs that he was going to hold. And he was less than a mile from me when all that went down. And we heard all the firing. But so that's kind of what happened in my first deployment, but somewhere certainly coming into the airport and then into Baghdad, there were ODAs that were leading us in, and they had kind of channeled the bad guys in a couple of places. So we just, went there and cleaned up. And I saw those guys, and it didn't take a rocket scientist looking at those SF guys and looking at me and my ragtag privates in Third ID. I was like, that is where I need to go. So literally, as soon as I got back from that first deployment, 8 months later, it was, we left in January. I came back in August. December, I went down and took the PT test. Then I went to selection in January of 2004 and then graduated in March of 2006, which was probably the best time of my life. You know what I mean? If you had told me 5 years before that I would have been a Green Beret, I would have laughed in your face. It just would have seemed so far out there and impossible that there's no way I would have been able to dream or conceive of that, but of course I didn't know September 11th was going to happen and everything that followed on after that. But, so I reported to fifth group and we were there for 4 months when we deployed in August of 2006 to go back. Now I'm in at the end of OAF 3 going into OAF 4. And, this is late 06. Man, what a different scene it was when I got back to Iraq. You know what I mean? Because when I was there during the initial invasion, when that ended, like even Sadr City, when we first took over, Sadr City was part of our sector when we first got to Baghdad. And all of Baghdad was like the wild, wild west. They were shooting every night all over the place. Within 2 weeks, we had that place locked down, the whole place. But as you know, units switch out. And I think it was not first AD. I think it was first ACR, third ACR, and then some of first AD were the next to come in. And their ROE was completely different. So Iraq started changing right then. When I got back in 06, I'm not going to lie, it was like the smell of defeat was in the air. You know what I mean? There was nobody out at night but the bad guys and us. And when I say us, I mean the special operations guys. Now, sure, there were some convoys that would run at night, but generally, if you were there during that time, you know what I'm talking about. There was nobody out at night. They just
typically like the route clearance guys, the engineers out there looking for the bombs, and
the guys that have the suckiest jobs.
Yeah,
that's right.
The guys that you see coming in the morning, you're just like, oh, dude.
Yeah. And so it was a bad time, man. And we were very, very busy. I think we had done 19 hits by the time I got injured. And so December 22nd came along and we had a big package coming up in 48 hours. We had 23 bad guys on the tip. And the tip is the plan that ODAs build, right? It's everything. It's all the intelligence from the different sources and who the bad guys are, what they've been doing. And then everybody, from the engineer, the weapons guy, the commo guy, the medic, the officers, or the commander and the team star. Everybody has this big part of the plan. Then it comes together and you run that up. And 23 bad guys is an enormous package. Usually a big package is 6 or 7. You know what I mean? That's a pretty decent package, but 23, that is huge. But these guys were right off fairly close to route senators, and they were just lighting the place up with IEDs and EFPs. And not only were they killing Americans, as you well know, they were killing plenty of Iraqis too. These people were just very, very bad people. And so we went into their neighborhood 48 hours in advance because 2 weeks before that, we missed a high value target by 2 minutes because now that the conventional unit switched out, it was no longer, we did have fourth ID when we first got there. Then first Cav came in and these guys didn't know their way around. They don't know who the bad guys are anymore. They have to learn all that. So they ended up,
we had to replace first Cav a couple of times. So there's.
Well, when you get there and somebody's been there a year, they know the area. They know all the bad guys. They know where their houses are. They know everything. But when they first get there, certainly your conventional units. Now, some of those guys served there before, but no one's been there in at least a year, maybe 2, year and a half. So these guys didn't know their way around. And then the commander wanted to go blackout. Well, you're not going to sneak anybody anywhere in the middle of Baghdad with like 100 or 200 vehicle stick. I don't care how slow you go. You're not sneaking in anywhere. You know what I mean? And then all the Iraqi police checkpoints, which there were numerous, they were everywhere. They were all just an early warning system for the bad guys at this point. So you definitely, what we found is if you did not go blacked out, and I'm sure these guys learned that lesson later, if you just went white light and you 60 miles an hour screeching to stop outside the door, everybody hops out, put the charge on the door, everybody gets back, blow the door. then the phones are ringing when you're inside the door and you got the bad guys. But when you don't do that and you go in with blackout, by the time you get in the house, it's just women and children. All the men are gone. They done fled. So that was part of the problem, but they also drove around the block. That was the 2 minutes we missed that guy. So we went this time to go make sure we knew the exact clean route in and clean route out so that we could put that in the plan. So when we went with said conventional forces, we could tell them exactly what streets, you know what I mean? Like I said, when it was 4th ID, we didn't have to tell them. We'd say, this is who we're looking at. Oh, yeah, we know exactly who that is and where they live. So we didn't have to tell them nothing, but it is what it is. So we had missed that high value target. So we went in 48 hours in advance to get that clean route in and out. And it got hit by a EFP, an explosively formed projectile. So basically this is a shape charge for those that don't know. And all the energy is focused in one direction. It's a very powerful weapon system. It's no one wants to get blown up by an IED, but I think people feared EFPs because they were just so deadly. They would cut you in half in a split second.
When they briefed us after, this was shortly after, because I went in 08 was when I met up. So yeah, when we got our briefs on them, they were really heavy on the EFPs. Like you said, IEDs are out there, they're scary, but them EFPs they're flat out terrifying. They said it's like coffee can size.
Yes.
It's full of copper that melts.
And nothing can stop it. We don't have none of our vehicles, not the RGs, not the tanks, not one vehicle we have will stop this round. And he's right. They use copper. The reason they use copper, first, it's in a concave position. And when the weapon fires, it inverts that cone. But they use copper because it heats up so fast. And when that explosion goes off, it heats it up to a gas. So basically, it's a gas bullet, if you will,
right?
That we don't have.
That's
armor
like
just doesn't stop
round.
it. It goes in one side and out the other side and keeps right on going. And so I was extremely lucky that it just barely grazed me. And it took half of both cheeks of my rear end. And the funny thing I always tell veterans, now I'm not only a legitimate half-ass, and no one can argue the point, but the VA actually gave me 50% for each cheek, bro. 50% for each cheek. which tells you how important your butt is. But I never I never realized exactly how important it was until I was missing half of it. And it really was when I got on a mountain bike and started trying to ride up inclines. And then I was like, oh,
it's like nothing blocking my ass.
That's you have a lot of muscle tissue. You have a lot of strength in your butt for walking, running, or when you're pedaling and you're doing this, man, you think it's all your legs, but it's a lot your butt. Your butt does an extremely, a lot of stuff for you, not just to pad your sitting down and make things comfortable. So yeah, man. So the good thing is I did survive it. You know what I mean? I see it as the hand of God because, as you know, the EFPs are no joke, man. I think they're responsible for somewhere around 973 deaths for service members and somewhere around 2,500 injured. And most of those are amputees in some form, and a lot of them with no legs. That's a fact. So the good thing is it led me on a journey that led me to where I am today, even though, when it happened, and certainly it took me off a team and it effectively ended my military career. So much as good has happened. Certainly being at that level, I'm a Green Beret and ODA. There's only a couple steps above me, and I'm going there. You're like on the pinnacle of life, and you are at the tip. You are really at the tip of the spear, and you're doing really important shit. And then just to get ripped right out of that, and then, oh, by the way, you're not going to get to do that anymore, most likely. You know what I mean? It changes your outlook and aspect. And I thought, certainly, probably not in the beginning because I was on a lot of medication, but several years later, I think probably 5 or 6, 7 years later, I had the first thought of, you know what, man, the best years of my life may already be behind me. which was a scary thought to me because when you're young, you never have that thought.
Mm-mm.
Because you have plenty of time to make up for whatever you've already screwed up, which is the truth most
Yeah.
of the time.
No, yeah, for sure.
But, it was a thought that occurred to me. So it led me to this thing called the Adaptive Training Foundation, right? And this is really one of the things that started catalyst me to try to take my life back in the way that I used to have it when I was a Green Beret. Because now, I'm disabled. I did have an amputation. I actually had 4, so I've got a prosthetic, and I can't do some of the same things that I always did then. Mostly I can, but it definitely changed things. And then when I got out of the military, then I thought, even though I was working for a really cool foundation that worked with Green Berets specifically, called the Green Beret Foundation, you just feel like you're part of such a smaller element now, and not in a good way, right? When you get to a group, or like if you went to CAG or even in Ranger Battalion, you are in a very small group, but it's an elite group. We're not talking about something you get stuck with. You had to work for that. And you had to get picked. So I don't know. That's what I was talking about earlier before we started recording. I kind of lost my purpose and direction when I lost that because I was in the military for 11 years. I pretty much wrapped my identity up in that uniform and certainly that beret in a short second. But it takes a whole lot longer to unravel that and to get over that and to get past that and to think, you know what I mean? I can still do things that are just as great. They're just not going to be in that way.
Yeah, especially, I mean, like in the situation that you were in, which we may have kind of grazed over a little bit. So if you want to go back to I know you grazed over kind of getting hit with that EFP. I mean, maybe kind of tell listeners what you went through after that, and then what led you to that adaptive training program.
So you want me to tell you about what happened, basically?
Yeah.
So we, like I said, we had a big tip coming up, and we need to get a clean route in and out. And for those that don't know, what that means is we need a separate, everything different, a route that went in one way to the objective that we were going to where we were going to take down these 23 individuals, and then a whole separate route all the way back out of the neighborhood, not going down any of the same roads that we came in. Now, I know that sounds, some people say, well, that sounds, common sense. But here's reality. At this time in Iraq, if you did that, and if this was a tactic they used, if you drove in to where you made a hit, as anybody that's done these, as soon as that door blows or however you get into that house, now the whole neighborhood knows you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like anything else. They all come out to watch. Many of them come out to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you try to do that and then drive back out the same way that you came in, they would put out more IEDs on that road, hoping you would come back. And you're generally there for 30 or 45 minutes easily. So they have time to do that. So you have to make sure and ensure that route are both clean and separate routes so that it lessens the likelihood that that's going to happen. Unfortunately for us, it didn't matter. When we pulled into the neighborhood, we no sooner called the B team and let them know that we were there and that we were fixing to go through the neighborhood. And this is probably at 10 o'clock at night. It's a little after curfew, so no one should be out. Not anybody in the public should be outside at this point. Mm-hmm. And so, but we weren't inside the fence 30 seconds. And to me, in the beginning, I didn't know what happened. The Humvee rocked a little bit, but I did have liberators on, right? I had some very good hearing protection on that was also plugged into our radios. So I'm talking to I have radios with my team, and I also have radio contact with the conventional forces that we're now, well, that night I did not, I'm sorry, but normally I would. So I've got that on, and the funny thing was I saw a roadblock right to my left that they had made, right? At this time, for those that don't know, the Americans, all of us conventional forces and all the military there had put out miles and miles of HESCOs, miles and miles of cement barriers, We did block some roads, and we, of course, going into any, like the green zone, there had to be like switchbacks with all these cement barriers, so you couldn't just come charging in. And but this was not one of those. This was like this was a tore up car, it was trash, it was rock, there was all kinds of, I could tell that the Iraqis built it, is my point. So I knew that we didn't know that that was there. So I'm looking at my map, and I'm looking at the FBCB2 that I had, and I am marking exactly on the road where I see that roadblock. So we'll now have this information. And in the middle of doing that, all of a sudden, it was like a little rush of wind, and the map was gone. My pen was gone. I had clear lenses on because it was at night. Those were gone. And I was just sitting there kind of looking at my gloves thinking, what just happened? And then I hear the call over my team net. And now my teammates are calling out IED drill, because at this point, everybody, it didn't matter what unit you were, whether you were a team, a squad, or a platoon, or a company, and everybody had practiced these IED drills in case you get hit by an explosive en route wherever you're going. So we had the same SOPs, and I hear them call that out, and I thought to myself, was that us? You know what I mean? Was it us? and there shortly after, there became some AK fire, and then a couple of our other the 250 cals that were still operable opened up, and it's because they had started an ambush, and they squashed that ambush. And effectively, those guys probably said, "Oh, these aren't the guys we want to fight." And really, they waited. They were smart. They pulled back. So we were there for a few minutes. And as I tell people all the time, then our radios wouldn't work. We could not get in contact with the B team, and we needed to give them our coordinates so they would know where this vehicle is. Now, the EFP, as I said, also went through the fuel tank. So it was already burning, because that's how I got set on fire. I'm sitting there once the map was gone, and I'm going to myself, what's going on? I hear them call it out, and I think to myself, was that us? The next thing that happens, I remember, was a woof. And instantly, my legs were on fire like a matchstick had just got lit, and you threw it on your charcoal that you had your lighter fluid on. 1 second, I'm not on fire, and the next second, both legs are fully involved, and the flames are up here. I had inhalation wounds from it. I had burns on my face from that. And then, even though I'd worked on an ambulance right out of high school for my first 6 years out of high school, and I know you can't put yourself out by fire. That's why we came up with the stop, drop, and roll. The adrenaline kicked in, and you have no control for 3 or 4 seconds. And I'm sitting there trying to put myself out, even though I know you can't. And I still remember to this day thinking to myself, why are you doing this?
Right. Like, and then you shouldn't be doing this.
My gloves caught on fire. So now most of my fingerprints on the ends of my fingers are gone. So when I got out and had to get a concealed handgun license, I had to submit them more than once to the FBI. And if I had to listen, I know those aren't the same prints that you had. I got burned. They're not the same anymore.
They Men in Blacked me up.
That's right.
Men in Black, they burn them off.
They took care of me. I don't leave proof anymore. So yeah, that's what happened the night it happened. You know what I mean? But when I was fully involved, next thing I know, the door opened. One of my medics was at the door screaming for me to get out. As he's saying, stop, drop, and roll. That's all I'm thinking. So I got out and rolled. It was very hard because of all the shit you have on. You can't really get a good tight roll. So it took a few minutes. Then they patted me out the rest of the way. The good thing is they packaged me up quick. And even though it took a few minutes to get the radios to work, hey, just know, people, it's just Murphy's Law. It doesn't matter how high speed we get. And how good technology gets, it will fail you in the moment that you need it the most. And it's what happened. We couldn't call. It took us about 3 or 4 minutes literally to finally get the B team back on the radio, tell them the coordinates, and then we hauled butt. The good thing for me was this was in Baghdad, Jadida. So literally it was only about a 15-minute, very fast drive to the green zone. And I got to the cache or the hospital in the green zone within 45 minutes of it happening, in that golden hour. And I was losing a lot of plasma and blood, because we didn't even know what all my injuries were. And on the ride back, I still remember my left foot was asleep, and I should have known. That tells me now the nerve damage was already done by the fire. Although I thought it was because we were stuffed into this Humvee. Now there were too many of us. You're not supposed to have this many people in there, but we're listed a vehicle now. We dropped 4 thermites on that thing, but it burned to the ground. But they still went back and tried to get it. Anyway, I get, as we're driving, something just said you should probably check your ass. It was like you hear people say there's a voice. There was a voice in my head, check your butt, and I'm like, I didn't know why. So I just reached back and instantly I knew because it was very slick and there was a huge deficit. When I pulled my glove back out, all this plasma and blood and other stuff was all over. I was like, oh. So the funny thing is, so I'm sitting there, and the nomadic is now trying to talk to me. And he's like, hey man, I know we didn't really get to check you out. I know you got burned, but do you think you have any broken bones? Are you hurting anywhere else? And I say, yeah, man, I think my ass is gone. And old boy says, I won't say the exact words.
I'll say it.
He says, motherfucker, I'm serious right now.
Right? Like, dude, fucking me too, dude.
I said, no, dude, I'm serious. I just reached back. So I think he thought I was telling him I think I'm going to die. Right? That my ass is gone. I'm leaving. And that's why he said that. No, I'm serious right now. Is there anything else? I said, dude, no, I'm serious. I just reached back and I'm pretty sure my ass is gone. He's like, oh, well, let me look. So like I said, we're packed in there. So I have to help him. I have to work my way this way. And he's grabbing 2 handfuls of my ACU pants and pulling. And I remember once I finally tilted up and I could tell he's leaned over looking, he goes, oh. And he just puts me back. He says, man, you went through some shit back there, didn't you? I was like, yeah, man. Yep. And so like I said, I've worked on an ambulance. So what does he do? He starts doing some small talk, right? Because this is what you do when somebody, certainly when you've had this much trauma,
right?
You want to keep them conscious, right? And you want to keep them talking. That's right. And you don't want them to fall asleep. So because he doesn't know if I have a head injury or not, which I did. I had a severe concussion. And so he starts that small talk. And I say, his name's Matt. I was like, Matt, look, I know what you're doing and I know why you're doing. I said, so if I feel anything, if anything changes, heck, if I don't feel anything at all, I will let you know. But right now, I'm really fucking pissed off and I don't feel like talking. And the funny thing is, I still, because it's dark, we're in, and he's in front of me, so I could see the silhouette of his helmet through the windshield, and I've got blurry vision, but I can still see that. And I see his head. He starts doing this. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to take that from you right now.
Like, yeah, man.
And so that was really cool. So then, he didn't really bother me. Again, it didn't take us long. We weren't far away. And, as we started getting up towards the switchbacks that I was telling everybody, there was 2 or 3 levels of them that you went through to get all the way into the green zone out from the Corrado Peninsula. And that was the way we were coming in. And he gets out the morphine and he pops me one, right? And he goes, how was that? I said, I didn't even feel it. He goes, well, let me get another one. I said, nope, don't bother. I said, we're almost there. They will give me something. You keep that. You guys might need that later more than I'm going to need it right now. And he's like, okay. And, basically they dropped me off and everything was fine up until they put me under, and then I don't remember much. And apparently my team I got stuck there for a couple of days in Baghdad. They actually shipped me to Balad, which is where they put a colostomy bag in, because it turns out when you're missing half your butt, you're not going to be able to go to the bathroom naturally because you'll get infections that will kill you. And they wouldn't even be, that's what they told there would be no way for us to keep you alive. So you end up with a colostomy bag. But my team did come back and told me, they said, you were speaking gibberish, man. You made no sense when we came back and saw you. So after they gave me all the medication and put me in surgery and I came back out, I was speaking gibberish. I don't remember anything for 5 days. And then literally I woke up in the burn IC unit in San Antonio, Texas at Burke Army Medical Center. And I will tell you, I didn't feel anything through that event. I wasn't in pain. I didn't scream out. I'm sure I was in shock, but I was really pissed off too, because I knew I wasn't finishing the mission, right? I knew that I was about to leave these guys short. And certainly I was the guy that was running all the commo. And so it was going to be a big deal. I hadn't thought it all the way through that, I'd be off the team and then I'd end up back in the United States and effectively this was going to end my career. But I knew it wasn't good and I wasn't happy about it. And I was glad I was alive, obviously. But as you all might know, I was just pissed, just mad. And it was nothing. It wasn't anybody's fault. There wasn't anybody could do about it. It's just there's no rhyme or reason to it. So that's kind of how that went. And then when I woke up, I was in so much pain when I woke up. There was never any question in my mind if I was still alive or not. Some people will say that they woke up and they didn't know if they were alive. Yeah, no, not me. I knew right away that I was still alive because I was in a significant, the burns, the chunk I was missing off my rear end, all that, I was in an extreme amount of pain. And it's all turned into good because I look at the blessings I was talking about earlier, all the milestones my kids have went through, graduating high school, college, trade school. My daughter's engaged. They both are in their careers and doing well. And I would have missed all that. But I've received a lot of blessings from this too, not just being on this show. I've met a lot of different people. I've been to meet a lot of veterans. And I've been able to help a lot of people in a lot of different ways. One of the jobs when I got back to fifth group, they didn't know what to do with me. And then they promptly shipped me to Tampa, Florida, MacDill Air Force Base as Special Operations Command. And there I worked for the CARE Coalition for the next 5 years. And then I was with anybody under Special Operations, the MARSOC Marines, Rangers, even all the way up to Delta Tier 1 element dudes. Anything under Special Operations all come under SOCOM. So we service all of those. And SEALs, the AFSOC folks, and I think I said the Rangers, all those are under Special Operations. So any of those get injured or wounded, then we would follow their cases and take them. But I also did a lot of benevolence out of that. And that's where I came across benevolent organizations and what nonprofits actually do. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things I did for SOCOM was all these organizations, as we know now, like from September 11th to 2020, like 50 or 60,000 military veteran charities started up. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous, the amount. And not all of those are legitimate. There's some unscrupulous people out there pulling some scams. So I went around to certainly all the major ones and some of those that had come up and offered, they wanted to provide services to SOCOM's service members. So, they don't do that today for you, but back then that's what we did. So we had a whole part of that office. I would go out and meet with all these organizations first in the beginning to feel them out, to make sure that they were doing the right thing, and then we started having conferences every year where we invited all these nonprofits to Tampa, where they would come in, then we'd have a big kumbaya meeting basically. And we would, in the beginning, let them all sit down and talk about who they are. So each of them could start collaborating, and then we would have relevant speakers and classes for wounded veterans and every type of topic, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. From PTSD to sexual stuff, when people have issues with that after service or after their injuries, and everything in between. And so we would have those professionals come in and speak on those 2 or 3 days. So that kind of started that ball. And then when I actually finally medically retired out in November 2012 as an E7, I went to work for a nonprofit, which was the Green Beret Foundation, and worked for them for 4 years. And I was able to help over 2,000 Green Beret families during my tenure there, and somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 million or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so that was very rewarding because both jobs really were, you know what I mean? Because one of the things, I've learned is that I do have a heart of service. I was kind of a mean kid when I was younger, but I was very hyper. I had some issues, But one of my first jobs, real job, besides I had a job at Dairy Queen when I was in high school, but after high school, I went to work on an ambulance. You know what I mean? And a Green Beret's not different from that. A Green Beret, the biggest difference, they are the only special forces. You hear that on the news all the time. Special forces people did this, but generally they're talking about special operations folks. Green Berets are the only special forces. They're the only one with the tab, and it's the only soldier on the planet. No other military has like what the Green Beret does, and the only one that does is the United States military. And the Green Beret is trained in the 360 degrees of combat, so it's not all just about fighting in combat and force multiplication. If we got to go do humanitarian efforts, we do that. If we have to help dig a well or build a waterway, we do that. If we have to build a church, a school, a hospital, when we go into austere environments, like when these guys first showed up in Afghanistan after September 11th, that medic, what they did was they went out and started working with the local indigenous folks. All the team did, right? And you had your little area, so you brought them in, you trained them, you fed them, and you help turn their lives around. We even armed them because these folks, back when we showed up, they didn't have weapons. They had hoes and shovels. Now the Taliban and some of the other folks there had weapons, had AKs, but not most of your average citizens. So certainly the people that are there trying to work and just live their lives, they don't care about any of the rest of it. But when those guys hit the town, right, they not only had to help feed them, had to get food for them, but the team medic now just became the village OBGYN, right? He became the village doctor. He became the village dentist. He became the village veterinarian. No joke. He has light skills in all those things. And that's kind of what we do. So again, it's not just combat, but the Green Beret is the only soldier that's trained in all 360 degrees of the battlefield and thereof. Like even your tier 1 elements, right? They're all high speed and everything, but they really only do direct action, right? And they don't plan. They get the plan from an ODA, because the way it works is, the CIA and other Green Berets are all out there in all these countries, probably in 100 right now. And they're just gathering all intelligence, and they send all these intelligence and these plans up. And so the best ones get cherry picked by your tier 1 elements. So they really don't have to plan. It's already given to them. But that's kind of what they do. You know what I mean? And they're still very professional. I would have loved to go on there, and had I got past this deployment and nothing like this happened, I definitely would have went and tried out for sure. So I'm not ditching them by any means, but they're not trained to do everything that the Green Beret is trained to do by any stretch of the imagination. Now, some of them were Green Berets. So that being said, those have the same training. And there certainly have been more mission creep from the tier 1 elements on Green Berets missions because of which, but they're never going to be able to do the whole ball of wax. And even your infantry soldier is not able to do that. So that being said, that's kind of what a Green Beret does. But they have the caring side to them as well, is what my point was. We're always serving someone else, and that's kind of what we do. We're advisors, we're force multipliers, but we're also that glue that kind of has to keep everything and everybody together and moving in the right direction. So that's kind of, it just kind of fit my personality. So afterwards, now I can't be a Green Beret anymore. And with my injuries and these burns, I'm not going to go contracting and carry a rifle. And I also honestly believe there's a huge difference than, volunteering to serve and being under orders in uniform and you have no choice, you're going, whereas then you're going to get paid to go as kind of like a mercenary.
Mhm.
I think it's a big difference, right? Big difference. And so I don't, it's not something I'm going to do. But the way I found to serve was walking through the Adaptive Training Foundation's doors. And what the Adaptive Training Foundation is, it's another nonprofit that's in Carrollton, but you have to be disabled to get in the club. There's no public membership, right? And it could be congenital. You could be born with it. But you have to have a disability in some form or fashion. And, as those come, we help them basically take their lives back. They come in for 9 weeks and train them very hard. physically 3 days a week like they're a professional athlete. And it really is no joke. I've went through the class 3 times. It doesn't matter what physical condition you're in. If you give 100% of every rep, that 9 weeks is very difficult to get through. It's a big push. So one of the things because of that, because that's really why we did the physical training. You know why we become such good friends in the military, become family? Because you went through a lot of suck together too. That's the reality of it.
Yep.
We went through a lot of suck together. And, and then you've been through it in different circumstances that normal people aren't going to be put in, very stressful ones at times. So it just builds that bond, right? Yeah, because you know who that person is, don't you? For a large degree. But the biggest part of it is like anything. Every single thing is 70% mental and 30% physical. From the time you had to learn to put the fork to your mouth to feed yourself, that is still 70% mental. And if you don't believe me, look at anybody that has a serious head injury. What do they have to do? They have to learn how to do everything again. They have to learn how to talk. They have to learn how to eat. They have to learn how to walk. They have to learn how to do everything again. And that's why. Because everything is 70% mental. So the biggest thing of the Adaptive Training Foundation, and I've heard this somewhat my whole life, but I didn't really grasp and take it in and absorb it until I got to the Adaptive Training Foundation, but it's the mental side of it, right? So we work on mindfulness. We work on breath work before and after each training session. But one of the biggest pieces we work on is the self-talk.
Yeah,
because, it's huge. So for those of you who don't know or haven't heard, the most important conversation you're going to have every day is the one you have with yourself in your head. That's going to be the most important conversation, because the old saying is either way, if you believe you can or can't is true. It's because you believe it. If you believe you can do something, you go out and do it. But if you believe you cannot, or you don't believe you can do it, guess what? You can't.
A lot of people don't understand how powerful like the mind really can be, until you're pushed to a situation like you have been, or you see people. But yeah, dude, the mind, it's crazy, dude. Like
it really is. It's that significant. And I've had to learn, because I grew up in a different era, like I said, but I learned this from other adults. Certainly in my family, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just human nature. But that being said, even though I became a Green Beret, and that takes a lot of mental fortitude and mental strength, because the physical attributes are not going to get you all the way through the course into that beret. It's a fact. And you'll see people, some of the biggest, strongest dudes don't make it, because once they get to the point in the course where your physical strength and your physical attributes can no longer get you where you need to go, people that can't get there mentally fold. And that's it. Once their body gives out and they don't think they can do it anymore, they believe that, and that's it. They're done. I watched it happen many times. I saw grown men cry real tears like babies, more than I ever saw in that 2 years of the course. I've never seen that before in my life, and probably never will again. But I have to admit, if my dream would have ended like theirs did at any point in that course, I probably would have cried real tears myself, because you put a lot into it. You put everything you have into getting through that and being the best that you can be. And when I would imagine when that fails, it would have had to been a huge letdown. But it's the mental piece. And so I could cuss myself as bad as anybody in 30 seconds or less in my own head just for the smallest of mistakes. And I've learned how detrimental that is. And I think, God, if I became a Green Beret, like, imagine what I could have done had I had a better mental game the entire time. Certainly, because here's one of the things people, and we all hear it, right? Somebody go, "Oh, I'm a dumbass." And when they're really meaning it, sometimes we all laugh, right? Yeah, you are. But there are times people say it and you go, "Man, don't say that about yourself," right? Everybody says, and what do they say? What's the answer? "Oh, I was just kidding."
Yeah.
I didn't mean, I was just kidding. Here's the problem with that. Your subconscious, that's right. And your subconscious doesn't know the difference. That's why when you're dreaming, or if somebody has PTSD, why do you think they're freaking out? Because their brain actually sees it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, and it believes it. So it's like,
believes it. So it doesn't know that you're not being shot at right now, that you're sitting in your,
Yeah,
the
but it's
worst
still
case.
firing off all the sensors
That's
that
right.
it's
That's
supposed to be
exactly
firing
right.
off, but and then
Because
your body's not working, and
it
it's like,
doesn't know the
"What the fuck
difference.
are we doing sitting here?" And then, yeah.
So you
We
should,
just explained it. We
that's
just
right.
explained it all right here, folks. Veteran
Yes.
Chat Project.
So where that led me to was what I'm doing now. And I still am a head trainer at the Adaptive Training Foundation, although this year has been a little different because I've taken on a couple of other projects. It first started with writing my own autobiography, and I don't think I'm so important that I need to do that. But I've been told for the last 15 or 20 years that I should write a book. And I always laugh it off. I'm like, dude, no one is going to buy my book. I mean, I'd be writing a book just for myself. That would be it.
Well, it's like we said, man, that one person, it could reach one
Well,
person who
I
got
finally
hit
got
the
to
same
that.
way.
That's right. I finally came to that, and I've had enough people tell me that. And then I thought about the drug addiction and the abuse that I had back in the day, and then to where I was able to come after that, and then the injury. There were so many times I had to reinvent myself and be, actually change directions. And so I thought, I do have a relevant story. And honestly, I thought about kids, right? Because if someone would have came to my high school and said, certainly in my freshman or sophomore year, and said, if you keep your nose clean, you can get out, you can graduate high school, go into the Army, go to Ranger Battalion for 3 or 4 years, and then you can go try out for Delta Force. It's called CAG, but and go out and hunt and kill, hunt, capture or kill the most dangerous criminals on the planet yourself. I would have been all in. I wouldn't have done anything. That would have been my life's mission, but I just didn't know that was a possibility. I didn't know anybody from Ranger Battalion. I didn't know any former CAG operators. I didn't know any veterans, period. The only veteran we knew worked with my dad at his work. And he was a Vietnam veteran that was a recon Marine that had, I want to say, 17 pieces of metal still in him from he did 3 different tours.
Yeah, so he probably wasn't very chatty.
I never met him. My dad knew him, and his dad told us stories. But yeah, apparently he was quite the character. Apparently everybody liked him, but nobody messed with him, obviously.
Oh yeah. Yeah, not at all.
But so what that led me to was talking to a guy that's helping me with my own autobiography. And he was like, I've always had this thought that maybe if we got like 25 of you adaptive athletes, right? And each chapter was a different author, and all 25 would be 25 different stories. What do you think about that? And I said, man, you know what? That sounds like a really good idea to me. And I'll tell you why, because what I've learned in the adaptive community is no different than what I learned in the Green Beret community, right? In the Green Beret community, you have high standards. Why? Because they're important. That's why. And the other part of it is, no matter how high we make those standards, it's human nature. We will, with our mind, heart, and soul, we will find a way to reach and many times exceed that standard. We've been doing it since the beginning of time. So it's kind of the way things go. But I learned that in the adaptive community because so many people, after this happens, they think their life's over, right? And then some people, in the worst case scenarios, everybody, their family members, their friends, they start doing everything for them. They don't hold them to any standard. And the next thing you know, these people can't do anything on their own. It's the worst thing you could do to somebody. It's literally the worst thing you could do to somebody. You have to keep holding them to high standards, and so the gym part that brought it in and what I've learned was everybody always comes in broken and with this long list of things that they can't do anymore, right? However, that's not true. You may have a couple additional challenges now to be able to do whatever it is you did before, what you want to do, but you can still do it if you really want to. You're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to work for it. And so I learned when they come in and they can I'm burned. I don't wear pants ever because this prosthetic with the sleeve, it's like a heater. I'm sweating all the time. I live in Texas, so I don't put on pants until it's like in the 30s. So they see what I look like, right? And they know. And when I tell them I'm not going to feel sorry for them, they know that I'm not going to. And then, but I will say, hey, listen, we're not going to, I'm going to do it all with you. Hey, whatever you want to do, we'll gladly do with you, but you're going to do it yourself. And we're going to show you how to do that. And then the other biggest part is we don't have a bunch of adaptive equipment, right? It's all regular gym equipment because we have people coming from all over the nation. There's only one, and it's in Carrollton, Texas. And we have people coming from all over the nation. So if we brought them in and had all this special adaptalized equipment and trained them for 9 weeks and then sent them home to Wisconsin or wherever they go,
right,
they're not going to be able to walk in a gym and find this equipment. So we show them how to adapt to the equipment. And so what I've learned, when you give people that hope and then you show them it's impossible, you would not believe the miracles we have happen every 9 weeks in that class. Because, man, to see people now, like I said, take back their lives is a big deal. So what I learned, what you get for people that have been disabled and then come back. So when it came to this book, I didn't just call anybody that went through the Adaptive Training Foundation or any injured person I knew. You had to be somebody that went through some serious, difficult shit and some dark days, but you came back, you fought for it, and now you're thriving at life in spite of, and you are absolutely killing it. And so those are the all-stars that I've picked. And now we're at 33. We're going to cap it at 40. And I think it's going to be the world's greatest mindset book and mental, because mental awareness, mental issues are now becoming a big deal. And, or finally, people are giving it the credit it should. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And it's not just for mental health, but even brain injuries and stuff. And I go back to the reporter that was from ABC. It's not Bob Woodward. It's Bob Wood something. But either way, this guy got injured in Afghanistan. And if you look when he came back from that blast, he's one of those that wore the helmet and was drilling on himself. He had to learn how to talk, walk, and every single thing all over again. But he worked for ABC. So he got the best medical care that money could buy. And if you look at him today, the only way you would know is by the scars on his face. He's still working at ABC right now. And he's on TV probably every night or at least several times a week because he's one of their main field reporters. But if you look at the guys in the military that me and you served with that ended up like that, where are they today? They're still looking the same way in the bed. Lights are on, nobody's home. Because they did not get the best medical care on the planet.
Yeah, and then people were walking past them in the streets because they're asking for money, and they're like, "Oh, look at this nasty homeless dude," or and
people really need to consider that, man. They have no idea what that person's probably been through. And certainly if they have any kind of a head injury, here's the big problem. Head injuries aren't like if me and you were out in the middle of nowhere, we're trapped on an island and one of us breaks our arm and we set it might not be right? But it will heal over time as long as we don't get an infection or something. But let's just say generally it's going to heal, and it may not be right. And it may not work exactly right for the rest of your life, but it will heal over time, even though you never went to the hospital. A brain injury is not that way. It's exactly the opposite. So the problem with TBI, certainly once you get to a certain level, if it's left untreated, it does not get better with time. It continues to degrade and to get worse. You know what I mean? And so, it's still, I don't know how I kind of got off on that mental health piece, but I think, that's what this big book is going to be, a mindset. And what I've learned about the adaptive community is just like the infantry, because even in special operations, at the end of the day, when you've got to take that objective, it comes down to basic infantry tactics, right? And basic infantry tactics are just like baseball and football. You learn lessons on those fields that apply to life. Your most basic infantry tactic applies to life. And the most basic one is always keep moving forward, regardless of the challenges. Why? Because to stop is to die. So you must always keep moving forward. And so I use that, in this, certainly with even regular people, but certainly people that end up with disabilities. And you think about it. So then all these different chapters, some of the questions that I ask and what we're really pulling out of these athletes are, what were the physical and mental struggles you had to go through what happened to you and afterwards, right? And then what are the techniques that you learned, how you overcame them? And there again, those apply to life. And each person is different. So that's why we're going to have 40 athletes, because not everybody's going to connect with my story, right? There will be other people that they will connect with their story, or something they shared will snap a light on in their light and go, oh, that's how you do it. And so that's why we're doing the chapter book. You know, it's the same reason I'm doing my autobiography, because I think there's some lessons in my life that certainly the youth and even other adults, if you're having some sort of addiction or any kind of trouble at this point, because getting through hardship is always the same. And it doesn't matter which hardship it is. It's going to take, you relying on some mental strength and using some good positive role models and some positive metrics on and goals of how you're going to get out of that. And so it's one of the things that I really enjoy about listening to each person's story, because then I learn other little tidbits of how they conquered this or that, and certainly the mental ones, because their physical ones are hard enough, but the mental hurdles are always the hardest.
Yeah, and they're constant.
Yes.
They're ever evolving. I feel like too. It's like your brain knows, like, oh, you beat this one.
That's right.
Let me give you another one to work.
Oh yeah.
And then it's like that could beat. Yeah, like that could really beat someone down too, especially if you don't really know. Like that's it's kind of how you grow past things. Like that uncomfortable, that area that puts you in. Like that's where the true growth is.
Oh, it is, and that's another saying I have now. You know what? If you feel uncomfortable, that's good, because that means you're growing. Anytime we're comfortable, you're not growing. And that could apply to anything in any aspect of your life. When you're doing something new that makes you uncomfortable, you are growing in that moment. So sometimes that's where you need to be.
Yeah. So, it's kind of unrelated, but it is related. It's like, that's why I started fishing, picked it up recently. And I noticed, like, every move I make, because it's just
it's meditation, bro.
It's something different.
It's meditation. Whether you understand that or believe it or not, it's no different.
Oh no, I do.
Praying is a meditation. But sitting in silence, fishing, you sitting there, whether you're talking or not, man, I don't know. I love to fish too for that very same reason, man. I don't know. I will keep throwing that line out there till they tell me it's time to go.
Yeah. I bought myself a little fishing boat, dude. I'll just get out there on the river and fucking just putt around. And mainly,
what river you go to?
So I'm up in North Dakota, basically in like the North Dakota Minnesota border. So Red River.
Yeah,
I'm up
here. No kidding. The Red River goes all the way up there. No kidding.
Yeah, dude. It runs from here. You can run. Well, on the other side, I believe on the other side of Fargo, you can run it pretty much all the way up to Vancouver.
Wow.
Winnipeg, I want to say. But yeah, it's only like 130, 140 miles to Canada from where I'm at. Maybe less. Maybe.
So it gets cold there, doesn't it?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Like, it's funny because you said 30 degrees. I'm like, motherfucker, it's 30 degrees outside right now.
Oh, I wish it was, man. I don't mind. The older I get, the more I don't like the heat. I don't like the cold either. But what I've learned skiing is I don't know, it's different. Now, when I get cold here,
it gets nice. Cold. It's nice skiing, especially unless you get on the one like really bad days. Like, I was living in Colorado before I moved here, so we would ski, like ride a snowboard, Keystone, Brack, and all that shit. And like, they're way up in the mountains, but you get a day where it's like really nice out. It's so
but
like,
even 30 feels great, doesn't it?
Yeah.
By the time it gets to 45, you are sweating your ass off.
Same here, ice fishing, man. Like you'll go out in the morning, it'll be 20 degrees, and then 30, 40 degrees in the middle of the day on the lake. Like, it's actually warm because all the snows are fucking light. I mean, if it's not windy, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
But we do ice fishing, all that shit, man. I did that. I was doing that last year more. Or not last year. It didn't get cold enough up here until like the end of the year. So it never got thick enough to drive out on. I'm not like walking out there yet. I'm not that dedicated.
Well, as I was saying, it's kind of a part of a meditation, and believe me, I don't go around telling you need to do meditation.
Mindfulness. Just call it mindfulness, and people are less.
Then they don't know. That's right. Because when I grew up, I made fun of people that meditated. I'm not kidding. I did for most of my life. It wasn't until I got to the Adaptive Training Foundation that I finally saw some value in it. And one of it is because, no matter what, as we mentioned earlier, your brain is constantly working and going, and it's good to be able to slow that down and almost stop it for 5 or 10 minutes. Even 5 or 10 minutes makes a huge difference in your day. And it's hard for me to relay that to folks because most people are like, oh yeah, no. That isn't for me. It's only because you don't know yet. That's really
it's because you haven't stood still, turn off all your shit.
That's right.
Take however long it takes to take 20 deep, not even deep like you gotta, but just 20 breaths.
That's
and
right.
Just be present and mindful that your breaths are there. You don't have to be 20, do 10 and call me. Let me know how you feel.
Boom.
You'll be like, God damn it.
He was right.
How does this guy know that? Let's just have to do it fucking 10 times a day because I'm just full of rage all the time. But that's just me.
Well, and when I was younger, it's slowed down a little bit now, but I think I've intentionally slowed it down. But my brain would never stop. And certainly I was one of those, if I was thinking about something, I'm never going to sleep. You know what I mean? Because I just couldn't turn it off.
Yep.
And once I learned the value of like even a moment's rest from that made a huge difference.
Yeah, because then you got to get to look at it with a second set of eyes almost, sleep on it would be a big thing my wife likes to teach me right now. Sleep on it. Don't make the decision right now. And I'm like, fuck that. I already made it.
I think it brings it's one of the things I found in fishing. I found it in golf. Hell, I even found it in long distance running in the Army when I had to run all those miles. When you get to that runner's high, but certainly skiing, fishing, playing, you get in those moments where there's like this peace, right? Or being out in the middle of the country where there's no noises, no nothing. It's just so peaceful and it brings a calmness to you. And that's what we're talking about right there is that peace and that calmness.
I had to back to my little fishing boat and it was like last week, I want to say, but 2 weeks ago when I got it, I dropped in, putting down the river. I look up, fucking bald eagle swoops down, and it's like at the Red River here is not super wide, so it's like he's just kind of doing this little number down the river, and I'm like putting 5 miles an hour behind him, and like, bro, I'm not like that far away from civilization, but like just where I was like there's nothing around me except for me and this fucking beautiful bird. Like I could.
Now you felt like you were 100 miles out in the desert, right, or the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, just like, man. And then like all I could think about was just like, man, like,
man, I hate to destroy the peace, but did you get your phone out and get a little video of it?
I tried to, man, but by the time I did, it was fucking, I was like, I got like I was still learning how to drive the little tiller, so I was like, I'm like, oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Almost went swimming over a bird.
Sometimes those, things like that, you got to get lucky and already kind of be recording when it just drops in there so you can catch it.
Or like when I'm sitting there like rigging up my hook and I look up and there's like 3 deer just sitting there sipping water out of the river. I'm just like, oh, hey, buddy.
I know.
See you in a couple weeks.
See you real soon.
Oh, man, I can't wait to eat you.
That's right.
But yeah, man. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here shortly. But I do want to ask just we like to do kind of like a last thought from you, like I know we talked about like that mindset and all that, but just kind of that last thought, like just if that one person you're trying to reach right now, like tell them what you want them to know on just like not quitting, not giving up, whatever.
Well, I always say, die first, then quit. That's kind of my motto. You know what I'm saying? But here's reality. We'll go for somebody that's having a tough time. Or maybe somebody that's out there thinking about, maybe that the world would be, or their family would be, or whoever would be better without you. Listen, you need to talk to somebody, right?
Anybody.
And I know this is the 1-800 number line. If that's all you have, then please use it. But if not, you need to really call somebody that you trust. And then just maybe tell them that you don't, kind of like women tell us now, right? They just want to come vent. I don't want you to solve my problem for me. I just want to be able to vent to you. I want you to listen because I had to learn. I always wanted to fix it.
Right. Like, let me help you. Let me do this. Let me do that.
Right.
Like, no,
you need to do this. You need to do that. And it would go away. No. So you need to tell them, listen, I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to listen. Just listen to what I need to get off my chest, and start there, man. Start there because, I just had a buddy. This guy didn't commit suicide, but one of the guys was on my team 2 days ago, got shot dead by an Alabama cop. And we're all trying to figure out what happened because he was dropping his kid off in the school line where this all developed and started. and nobody knows all the details yet. But basically, they try to say he's coming in the wrong direction on the road. Now, I guess that could be possible, but most of us have delivered our kids to school more than once. You know the patterns.
Right.
And so, but either way, he got in a verbal altercation with the staff. Then it turned into apparently they called the cops to de-escalate it, which I'm not sure why. But then it's maybe rumored that the principal tried to block him in from leaving a little bit. Then the police showed up. They had a verbal altercation. He left. The police officer followed him all the way to his house. And then apparently when they got out of the cars, they exchanged gunfire and our buddy was killed, And so even in those kind of moments, man, we all just have to stop and take a moment. You know what I'm saying? You're dropping your kid off in line, whether it's him getting mad or them and the staff going back and forth. Hey, listen, it's only words, man. Let those people go and get out of there and go about their business. You know what I mean? For it to turn into something like this,
it ain't worth
tragic as it gets.
And that's what's fucked up about the world this day. Like, as it is, like, everyone's so fucking wound tight that, like, something that simple and, not knowing all the details, but I mean, like, something that simple turns into a fucking death, a shooting death.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It was simple. He was dropping his kid off at school. So how that turns into the cops following him all the way to his house.
Right. Like, hey, you came in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over a verbal altercation. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that can't be enough. Like, now you got to block me here. And then, like, now I feel like I'm stuck here. So, like, naturally, I'm going to get into fight or flight, and I'm going to be a little fucking agitated,
Well, and then the cops show up. What you're going to be embarrassed for sure. This is, now every parent is coming by and every kid. And
right now, your kids are going to be pissed at you because they're embarrassed.
That's right.
But then now, dude, it's
terrible, man. But we also in the last, not this year, I believe it were both last year, you know what I mean? But we did have two huge pillars in the special operations community. One was a Ranger. He wrote a book. It's called Back in the Fight. His name was Joe Kapazinski, and everybody called him Joe Cap. I think he was from 3rd Battalion. He was shot a little bit before me. And I guess it severed the nerve. So he was a below the knee amputee. He got to go back as Ranger Battalion. He got to he was a team leader when it happened. He got to go back as an amputee and become a squad leader, then a platoon sergeant. And they were going to make him first sergeant when then they put him over the Thor 3 program, which is the rehab program that they made for special operations. And, did 11 deployments, then worked with the CIA for a few years, was going through a divorce. Didn't say a word, just went out to his shed and shot himself. And this guy was, like I said, he wrote a book, Back in the Fight. Y'all can look it up. Joe Cap. Really
I wrote it down. Great
dude. I knew him personally. I met him through BAMC. I still can't believe it. Another guy I met when I was at SOCOM in 2010 or 2011, me and him got to bring 20 special operations soldiers and their wife or whoever guest to the Army-Navy game in Philadelphia. And we got, the Lincoln Financial is their stadium, and they have a box just like the owners have a box. And we got to use they invited us to bring all these folks in their box to watch the Army-Navy game. And his name was Mike Day. And he was the SEAL that people have heard of because he's the guy that got shot 27 times and lived and killed the 3 or 4 bad guys in the room with him that shot him up.
Jesus.
And he lived through that thing. But literally 3 or 4 months, or at least easily within 6 months of Joe Cap killing himself, Mike Day shot himself. So it's 2 guys, and we all know there's a bunch of veterans. These are just 2 guys that I know were huge pillars in the special operations community that everybody looked up to, and it didn't matter.
I could think of, just off the top of my head, the guys I served with in 4 years, at least 4 or 5 in the last 10, dude. And it's always the same shit. You're like, it's like the guys that you didn't expect it to do, or the guys that like you almost went to vent about these things because you thought they were the guy, they were solid.
That's right.
But then it's, you gotta, the biggest thing I think I struggle with on that is like feeling guilty that I didn't know, or I'd never reached out, or like, stuff like that. And it's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's just one of those things that happens. It's as random as You know, it's just
No, it
nobody got
is.
to them in
You know,
time, and that's why I hope that this show gets a bigger audience down the road, and I hope that more people get the message, and I hope more people like you want to come spread the message of just like, dude, like there's so many more people out there that are talking about mental health these days, and that are willing to sit with you and listen.
oh, for sure, it's gotten serious. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
like you
we've
said,
lost
it's not
too
just the
many folks.
1-800 numbers
Yeah.
anymore. Like, dude, my messenger's always open. I've emailed people. I've had people call. You
Hey,
know, like I'm
and this
always
is
here.
yeah, this is the veteran chat project. So all you veterans out there, man,
Come chat.
if we all think that we're going to depend on civilians to save us and to curb this suicide and the VA to do that and politicians, no, it's going to be up to us. It's going to be up to us to reach out to your battle buddies and to make sure that they're okay. That's the only way that we're going to curb it. We're never going to stop it all. And just like these guys we talked about, just like yours, these aren't people that went out and threatened it or said they were going to do it. There wasn't any warning like that. There was no. So we all feel the same way after it happens. Was there something more I could have done? But the truth of the matter is, maybe you could have called, but it's hard to say after it's done. So
Yeah,
make
you know,
the
and
call. Make the
especially,
call.
you know, if that guy was in a shitty mood that day, he might have just said, "Hell yeah, bro, I'm good." You know, I love you, or something. You know, just something like that. And to us, a lot of that time, it's not even a big deal to, you know, just hear someone say like, "Hey, bro, I love you," and it's like, "All right, love you too." And then all of a sudden, you know, or like what's really bad is, you know, having a missed call or like a missed text.
Oh yeah,
that
I've
kind
heard
of
those
just
stories too, man. That's,
yeah.
oof.
And you're like, you know, was that like a cry out, or was that just like a, you know, like going through my Rolodex on my way out kind of thing, or I don't know.
Yeah, those are tough because it's so final. You never know. I mean, you're not going to get that answer, and you'll always wish you had been available or knew, or, you know, picked it up.
Yep. But that's just where, like you said, in that video that I shared, you know, like that's what you said, like, you know, there is something else out there afterwards. I believe the world's dimensional.
Oh, yeah.
I believe, you know, whatever happens after this, we transcend to a different dimension, whatever that may be.
That's right. Well, energy
And,
can't be destroyed. It can be transferred, but it cannot
right.
be destroyed. And we have energy. Life is energy.
Like our body is like a whole electrical system of energy.
Oh, it is. We're all frequencies, really, when it comes down to it.
And
That's
water.
a fact. Yeah, and 75% water.
Yeah. And we live on a planet that is
And so
only 3% of the oxygen, or of the air that we can breathe.
that's
Or
right.
whatever it
You
is.
know, and then even 75% water, so you're definitely conductive. Yeah, and again,
Yeah.
it comes down to, it's like electricity, we're frequencies. It's how everything really works. So
And that's vibes, dude. That's why when
Yeah.
people tell you they get vibes, I mean, that's a real
That's
thing.
right.
And then you really need to check those vibes.
Anybody that's ever been in a situation with the hair on the back of their neck stands up knows that what we're talking about, because that is your spirituality sensing something that's come here, what's there, you know, just like an ambush or any other trouble that you may be getting in. You get that sense. That's why people say, listen to your gut. Always listen to your gut, because that instinct usually is right.
I can't tell you how many times I was like, I like talked myself out of a gut decision and just been like, I
And then
fucking
regretted
knew it. Yeah, fucking knew it. And then like you don't, until you get older, you just think that it's just like, nah, fuck that. Like, no,
Yeah.
like that's actually like your who you are is trying to tell you through that voice is like,
Don't
this
do
is
it.
what we need to do. Like we need to, yeah, like yeah, it's crazy though. You know, you don't get
It
it
really
until
is.
you get it. And then once you
Yeah.
get it, you're like,
Now I'm never
oh.
not listening to it again.
But what's hard is getting people to do it. Like you said, like walk it, like, you know, you could show people the light, you could show people the door, all that stuff. But like until you actually get them to sit down and take those 10 breaths
That's
for a
right.
week, you know,
Well, you know
until
why? You know why the hardest thing for us to do is to hold our own self accountable. That is the hardest thing to do, because
it
you have
hurts.
to have an adult inside you that stands up and says, no, we can't, or this has to be this way. You have to be able to hold yourself accountable, or you know, if you're not able to hold yourself accountable, that's when you're going to run into a lot of problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I really like doing the show, and I'm really glad I'm doing it again, because like when I start doing the show consistently, I feel like as I'm saying these things, I'm more apt to like live like how I want to be and who I want to be as I'm like holding myself accountable through these conversations weekly where I'm like, fuck, I said I was going to do this last week and I didn't. So then I'll go fucking do it because I don't lie, you know?
Well, it's because it also stays in your subconscious. You know you didn't do it.
Right.
And there is something, there are endorphins that are released when you check that list off and you go do the things you know you're supposed to do. It's just the way it works. So
yeah, like this show feels like it's something that it's anytime I pick it up to go like I'm gonna start doing it again, like the things line up, the guests, they present themselves. So I'm like, it's gonna just progressively roll into me not even being a part of it and just veterans just coming on and talking is like what I would love it to be.
Well, don't fight it and then just keep it on the tracks. That's all you got to do and keep it rolling.
That's my plan. Stay consistent. Yep. I think I like this Saturday night thing because we're not fighting with the NFL for ratings.
No, that's right.
But yeah, man, I do appreciate your time, brother, a lot. Definitely will definitely have you back on in the future. I know there's more that we want to get into, but
absolutely,
I like to keep them to an hour and a half. That way,
it's smart.
Listen to the podcast. They don't get too bored. And
that's right.
And then it always gives me opportunity to say we have you back and get another show going. So
yeah.
Again, man, I appreciate you.
Well, and are you going to post it out? I know it's live right now, but I don't know if we have anybody on. But certainly, what we can do is I can share it. We can get it out on social media, and somebody will watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll so it's going to the YouTube channel right now, which I'll send you all the links and everything.
Yeah,
and then what I'll also do is take the audio and turn it into a podcast and upload that either tomorrow or Monday.
Perfect.
So that way you can share just the audio so people can listen to it. Just have them if they want to chat about it.
I'll share both. I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's get the word out there.
Yeah, I mean, we're on the podcast is on all the major Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. So I mean, it's easy to find. Veteran Chat Project, we're out there.
Yeah.
We took about a year hiatus, and I say I used to have a partner that did it with me. He's doesn't want to do it anymore, so it kind of took me a while to want to do it by myself. And I'm back. I'm not going nowhere. I'm going to start doing some live streaming, like I was telling you the other day, where I'm out fishing and just basically set up the camera and fucking chat. I like to post the link to get on too. Sometimes when we have more visits, like when we were doing it more consistently, we would have more viewers in. So I'd post the link, and like right now would be a time where like we would stop recording, but like if anybody had questions or wanted to talk to you, they could just jump in. Like I know Alder, he's in Texas. James Alder commented Dallas. Yeah. When you were talking about Dallas Meps.
Oh yeah.
He's one of, and it was funny. So he was actually, I think he said he was in basic training during 9/11. So you, and then there's another guy he served with that was been on our show a couple times, Mike Rock, that actually got me on one of his movies. Quick shout out to Mike Rock, Tahoe Joe 2 on Tubi.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a quick little 20-second cameo of Veteran Chat Project talking about it's a pretty cool movie. It's he makes his own movies. It's like a what's the word, Bigfoot kind of movie where he's he's not into Bigfoot, but his buddy is.
Yeah.
So like his buddy goes missing looking for Bigfoot, so him and his other buddy go searching for his boy, and he's like ex-SF guy. He's an SF guy too. So I'll have to send you the link to his episode so you can listen. To it. That guy's fucking awesome. But
I always make fun of those guys. I'm like, get you some Fleer, man. You'll find out if he's really out there or not.
Yeah. No, but it's a cool little movie, man. They made it like an independent little thing, man. It's pretty cool. Nice. But I got to be like 10, like I said, 10, 15 seconds in it. But
nice.
We're on the movies now. We're big time.
Awesome. Yeah, buddy.
All right, brother. Well, I'm gonna go upstairs. I think
I
hear my kids still running around, so I'm gonna go try to get some daddy snuggles in before he goes to sleep.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Good talking to you. Yeah, man.
All right, guys. I appreciate you guys for listening. For those who listened or those who are about to listen, God bless. And thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah, God bless you guys, and thanks.
Peace.
All right. See ya.